Los Angeles in the late 1960s was a city of contradictions. On one side of town, hippies filled the streets with music, flower crowns, and chants of love and freedom, while on the other side lurked darker currents that thrived on unrest and rebellion. The so-called Summer of Love had promised peace and unity, but by 1969, the dream was fading. Rising crime, political assassinations, and disillusionment with the Vietnam War fractured the counterculture. In this atmosphere of uncertainty, a strange and broken man named Charles Manson found a way to twist the ideals of peace and freedom into something terrifying. The sun-drenched hills of Hollywood would soon become stained with blood, and the glamorous world of film and music would collide with one of the most infamous crime sprees in American history. The Tate-LaBianca murders were not just acts of violence. They were events that symbolized the violent end of the 1960s, shocking the world and forever haunting the cultural memory of a generation. Charles Manson's path to becoming a cult leader was shaped by hardship and rejection. Born to a troubled teenage mother, Manson spent most of his youth bouncing between relatives, foster care, and reform schools. By adulthood, prison had become a revolving door in his life. Yet behind the petty crimes and failed attempts at stability was a man with an unusual ability to manipulate. Small, wiry, and unassuming, Manson nonetheless radiated a strange charisma. He absorbed ideas from religion, philosophy, and the psychedelic music scene, blending them into his own twisted ideology. When he was released from prison in 1967, he drifted into San Francisco at the peak of the counterculture movement. There he found young runaways and disillusioned seekers who longed for belonging, and he gave them exactly what they craved: community, purpose, and the promise of spiritual awakening. These vulnerable souls became the Manson family, a devoted group who believed in Manson's apocalyptic visions and followed him without question. Life inside the Manson family was far from the peace and love ideal it pretended to represent. The group settled at Spahn Ranch, a rundown former movie set in the hills of Los Angeles. There, Manson presided over a communal lifestyle fueled by drugs, free love, and music. He spoke endlessly of prophecies, blending biblical imagery with his obsession with the Beatles' White Album. His followers, mostly young women, surrendered their identities, allowing him to strip them of individuality and mold them into instruments of his will. They called him both Father and Savior, and their loyalty became frighteningly absolute. In their world, reality blurred under the haze of LSD and manipulation until Manson's words carried the weight of divine command. The ranch became a closed society where dissent was crushed and obedience became a way of life. Outsiders who visited were often unsettled by the eerie devotion, yet within the family, fear and love were indistinguishable forces, binding everyone to Manson. At the core of Manson's teachings was his prophecy of Helter Skelter, an apocalyptic race war that he insisted was imminent. According to Manson, black Americans would rise up against the white establishment, leading to chaos and bloodshed. In this warped vision, Manson and his followers would survive by hiding in the desert until the war ended, at which point they would emerge to rule the world. To ignite this chaos, Manson believed he needed to commit shocking acts of violence that would be blamed on black revolutionaries, sparking the war he predicted. He twisted the lyrics of the Beatles, particularly the song Helter Skelter, into supposed prophecies that justified murder. For his followers, these ideas seemed prophetic. And the bizarre mixture of music, scripture, and paranoia gave their actions a sense of cosmic purpose. Under Manson's control, they prepared for the ultimate act of destruction, convinced that their brutality was part of a grand destiny. While Manson plotted violence, a very different life was unfolding at CeeLo Drive. Sharon Tate, a rising Hollywood actress known for her beauty and talent, was 8 months pregnant and living in a luxurious home with her husband, director Roman Polanski. Her life was filled with promise and anticipation, surrounded by friends and a bright future. Polanski was away working in Europe, but the home was alive with visitors. Friends like hairstylist Jay Sebring, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, and her Wojtek Frykowski. The house represented the pinnacle of glamour and creativity in Los Angeles, a world far removed from the dusty chaos of Spahn Ranch. Yet this elegant sanctuary would become the target of unspeakable horror. In Manson's mind, the people inside Cielo Drive were not individuals but symbols, representatives of a system he despised. The coming clash between innocence and darkness would forever mark Hollywood history. On the night of August 8, 1969, Charles Manson ordered 4 of his most devoted followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to go to Cielo Drive. He instructed them to kill everyone they found inside, telling them to do something witchy. Armed with knives, rope, and a gun, the group drove through the dark hills of Los Angeles toward the home of Sharon Tate. Linda Kasabian, the youngest and least experienced, would act as the lookout while the others were to carry out the slaughter. As the car crept toward the gate, a sense of eerie inevitability hung in the air. None of them questioned Manson's orders. For them, his voice carried the weight of prophecy, and they believed the blood they spilled would help trigger the coming revolution. Inside the house, laughter and conversation filled the night, unaware of the nightmare approaching. The attack began with the murder of Stephen Parent, an 18-year-old who had been visiting the property's caretaker and was leaving in his car. Tex Watson stopped him and, without hesitation, shot him 4 times. The killers then broke into the main house, where Sharon Tate and her friends were enjoying a quiet evening. Chaos erupted as the intruders brandished weapons, tying some of the victims and terrorizing them. Jay Sebring was shot and stabbed when he tried to protect Sharon. Abigail Folger and Wodiak Frykowski attempted to flee but were hunted down and murdered with overwhelming brutality. Sharon Tate, pleading for the life of her unborn child, was stabbed multiple times until she fell lifeless to the floor. The house became a scene of indescribable carnage. A place once filled with dreams, now reduced to bloodstains and silence. The killers left behind chilling messages scrawled in blood, signs of the madness that had driven them. The discovery of the Tate murders the following morning sent shockwaves through Los Angeles and the world. Reporters swarmed the crime scene, and headlines screamed of unimaginable horror. The sheer savagery of the killings, combined with the celebrity status of Sharon Tate, captured global attention. Rumors spread wildly, with theories ranging from drug deals gone wrong to satanic rituals. Hollywood's elite felt vulnerable, locking their doors and hiring private security. The murders shattered the illusion of safety that surrounded the glamorous lives of the rich and famous. For a city already struggling with rising crime, the Tate massacre represented something darker, a sense that no one, no matter how privileged, was beyond reach. As the investigation stumbled, fear gripped the public. Little did anyone know, the bloodshed was not yet over, and another family would soon be targeted in the same reign of terror. The very next night, Manson led his followers on another mission. This time, he joined them briefly before sending them to the Los Feliz home of supermarket executive Leno LaBianca and his wife Rosemary. The couple had no connection to Sharon Tate or the entertainment industry. They were chosen at random. Manson tied up the LaBiancas before leaving, ordering his followers to finish the job. Tex Watson, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Leslie Van Houten carried out the murders with shocking cruelty. Leno was stabbed dozens of times, a carving fork left protruding from his stomach, while Rosemary was attacked with knives in a frenzied assault. The words "death to pigs" and "Helter Skelter" were scrawled on the walls in blood, further evidence of Manson's warped ideology. The randomness of the attack amplified the terror, proving that anyone could become a victim. The sense of safety in Los Angeles evaporated completely. The brutality of the LaBianca murders left detectives baffled. The similarities to the Tate killings were undeniable, yet the victims came from such different worlds that police initially hesitated to link the crimes. The city spiraled into fear as speculation mounted. Residents installed alarm systems and carried weapons, desperate to protect themselves. The press dubbed the killers monsters, though the identity of the perpetrators remained hidden. Within the Manson family, however, loyalty remained strong. Followers saw themselves as soldiers in Manson's holy war, convinced their acts of violence were part of a larger destiny. The senselessness of the crimes left law enforcement scrambling, while Manson continued to preach about Helter Skelter, weaving his delusions deeper into the fabric of his followers' minds. Each act of brutality reinforced his control, tightening the grip of fear and devotion that bound the family to him. Manson's power over his followers stemmed from a unique mixture of manipulation and psychological control. He preyed on the insecurities of young runaways, offering them love and acceptance, before stripping them of individuality. Through drugs, isolation, and relentless preaching, he created an environment where questioning him was impossible. For many of the women, their sense of self had dissolved completely, leaving only devotion to Manson's will. Even in the face of murder, they felt compelled to obey. Fear of abandonment, combined with a desperate need for approval, kept them bound to him. Manson's charisma was not the charm of a traditional leader, but the hypnotic influence of someone who understood weakness and exploited it without mercy. His family had become an echo chamber, reinforcing his delusions and silencing dissent. In this world, murder was not only justified, but seen as necessary, ordained by the man they called their savior. The investigation into the Tate and LaBianca murders was plagued by missteps and confusion. At first, detectives treated the crimes as unrelated, wasting crucial time pursuing false leads. The savagery of the attacks made the case especially difficult, with few witnesses and little evidence pointing to a clear suspect. Meanwhile, the Manson family continued their strange life at Spahn Ranch, seemingly untouched by the chaos they had unleashed. It was only after unrelated arrests for car theft and vandalism that police began to piece together the truth. As whispers circulated about Manson's group and their violent tendencies, detectives started connecting the dots. Still, the enormity of the crimes made it hard to believe that a group of young drifters, led by a failed musician, could have orchestrated such horrors. The unraveling of the case would depend on the courage of one member who chose to break her silence. Linda Kasabian, the lookout on the night of the Tate murders, became the key to solving the case. Unlike the others, she was deeply shaken by what she had witnessed and struggled with the weight of her involvement. When investigators offered her immunity in exchange for testimony, she agreed, revealing the chilling details of both nights of slaughter. Her account provided the missing link that tied Manson and his followers to the crimes. Through her words, the courtroom would later hear the commands, the screams, and the twisted justifications behind the murders. Kasabian's decision to speak out fractured the illusion of loyalty that Manson had cultivated. For the first time, the world saw the family for what it was, not a group of free spirits, but a cult bound by violence and manipulation. Her testimony turned the tide, ensuring that justice would finally catch up with Charles Manson. As the net closed around Manson and his followers, police conducted raids on Spahn Ranch, arresting family members on various charges. The atmosphere was surreal. Despite their leader's arrest, many of the young women remained fiercely loyal, singing his songs and defending his actions. For the public, the image of these seemingly ordinary girls speaking so casually about murder was deeply unsettling. The cult's grip on its members revealed the terrifying extent of Manson's influence. During questioning, some still claimed they would kill again if Manson asked. This blind devotion made the case not just a matter of criminal justice, but also a study in the psychology of control. When the trial finally began, the world watched with morbid fascination, eager to understand how such atrocities could be committed under the spell of one man. The trial of Charles Manson and his followers became one of the most notorious spectacles in American history. From the very beginning, Manson turned the courtroom into a stage. He carved an X into his forehead, later transforming it into a crude swastika, declaring himself apart from society. His followers mirrored his actions, sitting outside the courthouse, chanting and showing their allegiance. Inside, Manson disrupted proceedings, shouted at the judge, and manipulated the attention of the media. The trial was not merely about murder, it was a battle over narrative. Prosecutors painted him as a dangerous cult leader who orchestrated killings without lifting a knife, while his defense attempted to portray him as misunderstood. The chilling devotion of his followers, combined with his bizarre antics, made the proceedings both horrifying and surreal, cementing the case as a cultural phenomenon. Testimonies from former family members revealed the terrifying details of life under Manson's control. Susan Atkins, before later retracting, initially boasted of the killings, describing the bloodshed in disturbing detail. Others spoke of Manson's prophecies, his obsession with the Beatles, and the constant atmosphere of fear and drugs that permeated the ranch. Linda Kasabian's account of the Nights of Terror provided the most damning evidence, her words painting a vivid picture of helpless victims begging for their lives. For the jury and the public, the testimony was both shocking and illuminating, showing how ordinary young people had been transformed into instruments of brutality. The trial revealed not only the facts of the murders, but also the mechanics of manipulation and control that allowed them to happen. It's also the mechanics of manipulation and control that allowed them to happen. Each revelation deepened the sense of horror surrounding Manson and his family. In January 1971, Charles Manson, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, and Patricia Krenwinkel were found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder, with Leslie Van Houten convicted for her role in the LaBianca killings. All received death sentences, but in 1972, California abolished the death penalty, and their sentences were commuted to life in prison. For many, the absence of an execution felt like unfinished justice, yet the assurance that Manson would never walk free brought some measure of relief. The cult had been dismantled, its leader locked away, but the scars remained. The murders had not just claimed lives, they had robbed a generation of its innocence. The case closed with the perpetrators imprisoned, but the questions it raised about power, devotion, and evil lingered, continuing to haunt the American psyche long after the verdicts were delivered. The cultural impact of the Tate-LaBianca murders was profound. The violence marked the symbolic end of the 1960s, shattering the illusion of peace and love that had defined the decade. Hollywood, once a glittering beacon of glamour, became a place of fear and suspicion. Celebrities who had once left their doors unlocked now lived behind gates and guards. For ordinary Americans, the murders embodied a terrifying reality. Evil could emerge from within, carried out by those who looked like the kids next door. The case changed how people saw cults, counterculture, and the dangers of blind devotion. The dream of the 1960s, with its promises of harmony and change, was replaced by a darker vision of disillusionment. The blood at CLO Drive was not just a crime scene, it was a symbol of a nation waking up from a dream. Charles Manson himself became a grim symbol of evil. Though he never wielded a knife during the murders, his influence was undeniable, and his name became synonymous with madness and cruelty. Over the decades, he remained a figure of fascination, giving interviews filled with rambling philosophies and unsettling charisma. To some, he was a monster. To others, disturbingly, he became a symbol of rebellion. Musicians, filmmakers, and writers referenced him, embedding his image in popular culture in ways that blurred the line between infamy and celebrity. Yet beneath the sensationalism lay the truth. Manson was a manipulator who thrived on control and destruction. His myth grew not because of greatness, but because of the incomprehensible horror he orchestrated. The fascination with him revealed society's struggle to understand how one man could command such devotion, and why ordinary people could become agents of unimaginable violence. In the end, the true legacy of the Tate-LaBianca murders lies not with Charles Manson, but with the victims. Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, Stephen Parent, Leno LaBianca, and Rosemary LaBianca were lives cut short, dreams extinguished in acts of senseless brutality. Their families carried the grief for decades, never escaping the shadow of that summer. The murders forced America to confront uncomfortable truths about cult psychology, the fragility of innocence, and the danger of blind devotion. Even today, their story serves as a cautionary tale of how charisma can mask cruelty and how ideals can be twisted into weapons. The blood spilled in August 1969 serves as a reminder that evil often hides in plain sight, waiting for the chance to strike. Remembering the victims honors not only their memory, but also the lessons their loss has taught the world, ensuring that their tragedy is never forgotten